Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Kennedy and Looney. Let's get into this. We've got a show lined up. Jesus Christ.
During the ArriveCan scandal, we heard variations of from public servants that, quote, we can't find the records. And when records disappear, this stops being an administrative issue and becomes an accountability issue. And so what we're looking at now is this question about business value versus what's transitory. Do you think that that approach works? Yes or no?
Yes.
And do you worry that when employees are being asked to flag what is a business value within 15 days, that there's a risk that the records won't be found, won't be easily found, and will more often lead to results in access to information requests that say no record exists, when in fact that, perhaps not through malice, but just simply through the act of trying to keep records, that it's going to make it harder for accountability to be brought to bear?
This is why I said that retention policies and proper information management policies are a good thing, but they have to be accompanied by training with strict directives. And as you just pointed out, access without a record, if there's no records, there's no access. But at the end of the day, we do, and I do support proper management of information. The uses of teams to make important decisions should not be allowed or encouraged. There's way to do that, and it would be the same thing as saying we cannot have meetings anymore or oral discussions. Those happen, but you have to have somebody at the end of the day, at the end of the meeting, taking minutes, explaining what was discussed, what were the decisions made, and how, and based on what.
Is there a greater risk to the integrity of the system and Canadians' confidence in their institutions? Look, at the start of the ArriveCan scandal, we were told there's absolutely nothing to see here. It turns out that it was the tip of the iceberg on massive contracting problems, and ultimately, in some cases, criminal charges were pursued. We have civil action being taken to recover the money. But we were only able to do that by piecing together records. So I haven't been presented with a compelling reason why these chats need to disappear after 15 days, but I can see a pretty serious downside with not having access to records if a decision is made or direction is given or a discussion is had that later would have value in having that accountability.
Just so you know, that when I was saying earlier, when there's an access request, there has to be a mechanism to stop the deletion of any records, because those records, whether they are transitory or not, if they are responsive to the access request, they should be treated and processed. Whether people are using Teams for other reason than just what they're supposed to be used, and it's like to quick conversation, not business-related activities. This is a matter of where the head of the institution needs to be very clear how these messages has to be used and managed and properly saved.
What would your recommendation be as a minimum retention period for Teams chats that include decisions or direction?
I think this is something that you need to talk to the library and archives. They're the one responsible for setting some of the rules. And again, it really depends on the type of activities that are being used for these type of communications.
So what metric do you track that proves that bad records management is hurting requesters? And are you able to tell us how that metric has changed over the past year?
Well, the fact that we're using now electronic documents, back and forth emails, people are not, even inboxes should be cleaned by people. There shouldn't be 5 people keeping the full communication of one email. There should be somebody responsible at the end of the day to save those emails in a proper folder, proper repository. It shouldn't be kept in inboxes in everyone's,
Right.
and that's one of the biggest issues that we have.
I have just under a minute left. So you have binding order powers, which I think is critical for any commissioners. This is crucial. Are institutions complying on time and more often with you now? And how often are you seeing that your orders are ignored without going to court?
It has happened a couple times. I think we have 8 mandamus that was presented in court to force an order to be respected. In the last year, I only had to do it once, and it's now, I think the message has gone through. Like, people are not ignoring my orders anymore.
Thank you.
In Canadian federal politics, the Canucks are represented by 2 separate yet unequal groups: the globalists who sold out and the opposition trying to salvage a country. These are their stories.
Questions, first round, 6 minute. Mr. Barrett, go ahead.
Minister, I have a bunch of questions. They're going to be brief. I appreciate that it's a complex topic, but I'd ask if you could keep your responses equally brief. The first thing I'd like to just touch on with you is the Canada Revenue Agency developed Charlie the chatbot, and Charlie the chatbot did a really bad job, and his reliability, or its reliability, certainly did not meet minimum service standards or the expectations of Canadians who have to get it right to the penny when they deal with CRA, but the chatbot didn't even get it right half of the time with the advice it gave. Do you have are you drawing from this lessons that you are going to apply to the use of AI in its rollout across the federal public service or the government?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I'm obviously aware of how our government is scaling the use of AI across departments and agency. There is an effort to drive transformation across government and support a more efficient public service so we can serve Canadians better. And of course, AI is meant to serve public servants, and we have CanChat and GC Translate. I will say that the Treasury Board Secretariat has a public register of hundreds of government uses of AI. When something is not functioning as it should, obviously there are specific measures to make sure that action is taken to serve Canadians more accurately and in a better fashion. Absolutely.
So, Minister, but just for clarity, this cost taxpayers $18 million, and 66% of the time it provided incorrect information to tax filers. Acceptable, unacceptable?
I think every moment the government serves Canadians, Canadians demand the highest standards and the highest form of efficiency. And I will say I know that the Treasury Boards and PSPC has rigorous regulations and rules about how they procure and the standards, and absolutely meeting the high standards is the expectation of Canadians in any department. And so, working to improve that is core.
Minister, you'd say 34% accuracy is not acceptable.
I would say the goal for any use of any technology is to make sure that we serve Canadians with the highest accuracy level and the highest efficiency.
I wouldn't say that was the most efficient way to say that getting the answer right 34% of the time is unacceptable. And you can have the opportunity to say that in your next response. We've seen that the government is going to take a move to reduce the access to information for Canadians by limiting the retention of instant messages and email messages. We saw in the ArriveCan scandal that key actors simply just deleted files. We've seen that departments are taking years to respond to access to information requests. What commitment or guarantee are you prepared to make that all of the audit trails and that in fact audit trails will be part of the integration and rollout of any AI systems in the government? Are you prepared to make that commitment today?
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, I want to say two things about how both the Treasury Board functions under this and Mr. Ali functions under this. All procurement and all the regulations are followed rigorously to make sure there's transparency and accountability in our communication and in how these any procurement and any use of this technology will function.
So, for example, how much time do I have, Chair? 2 minutes. For example, when an email is sent, there should be the opportunity for access to information requests to be made. But that happens from person to person. If there's simply work product being generated through an AI system, there's no paper trail of how we got to the end result. And if the end result is simply printed out on a piece of paper at an office, but the audit trail is disappeared instantly or after 15 days, obviously that doesn't provide the level of transparency that Canadians would look to have and look to get. For example, by either getting the information through an ATIP, through an inquiry of ministry, or by asking individuals to appear before parliamentary committees. We don't have that option with AI, unless that you would be responsible personally for coming to see us every time we had a question about an AI system.
Let's make sure. Again, I appreciate the question. Just a couple to make sure that we're clear, all records of business value are retained. Okay? Obviously, records that are transitory are not retained. They're transitory in nature. We follow all the rules in terms of our record keeping, and when we're making a decision about procurement, as Treasury Board will, we're following the guiding principles across all of that. I will say that Treasury Board work does have some principles on the automated decision system making and guides for generative AI usage.
Minister,
so there are guidelines on that.
Minister, can we expect new rules and public consultations on what that's going to look like with respect to deepfakes and how we're going to protect children from the use of sexually exploitive and non-consensual image creation through AI systems?
Need a very, very quick response.
It's an excellent question. Absolutely. We already have a bill that's tabled by the Justice Minister because we believe that would make it a criminal offense to share sexually explicit deepfake imagery. We'd love to have support on that, and I have lots more to say about deepfakes.
The value of Canadian citizenship is predicated on maintaining a high-trust society where everyone within our borders upholds the institutions that creates our peaceful pluralism, particularly and at a minimum upholding the rule of law. And so, if someone is not a citizen of Canada and they are a guest here, our laws state that if they commit serious crimes, they need to leave. But that is not what, in many cases, is happening today. While millions of non-citizens in Canada come to our nation and are here playing by the rules, there are now a legion of cases of those who do not, and that number is rapidly rising. This incredibly destructive trend is the direct result of a decade of Liberal government policies that have created loopholes and allowed serious criminals to be immediately released on bail, receive lenient sentences, and even claim refugee status in order to avoid deportation. In short, thanks to the Liberal government, there are now far less deterrents for non-citizens to get involved in gang activity, traffic drugs, and commit violent crimes. I know that statement will make some quarters clutch their pearls. Oh, you can't say that. But the reality is that if we are going to protect Canada's pluralism, this truth must be spoken and addressed. Every statistic and every lived experience imaginable for law-abiding families in Surrey, Brampton, Edmonton, and beyond proves what I have just said is desperately and disgustingly true. Violent extortion schemes that have turned peaceful neighborhoods into zones of fear are but one prime example. Since the Liberals have assumed power in 2015, extortion incidents have surged by 330%. In British Columbia alone, extortion incidents have skyrocketed by nearly 500%. since 2015. And across Canada, the number of people charged with extortion rose from 680 to 2015 to 1,258 in 2024, an 85% jump, while the rate per 100,000 ballooned from 8.56 to 31.82, a 272% increase. That's a lot of statistics. That's a lot of numbers. But those numbers represent real people, real human beings who have had their lives and their communities shattered. Small business owners who are receiving crude threats, demanding protection money, only to have their shops shot up. Homes that are riddled with bullets, and arsons that destroy people's livelihoods and sanctity. You'd think that the Liberal government by now, seeing all of these cases, seeing the fear that is exploding in many communities across Canada, would do something about it, right? Right? Wrong. A decade of soft on crime policies and the rote partisan rejection of constructive conservative proposals to end this tidal wave of violence has done what? It's emboldened gangs, many with transnational ties, to prey on the most vulnerable communities in our country, many of whom are newcomers and immigrants themselves. Worse, a very recent global news story reported the following, and I'm going to read right from it. Canada's plan to expel those behind BC's extortion epidemic has hit a roadblock after more than a dozen suspects facing deportation claimed refugee status. The foreign nationals were identified by BC's extortion task force, but once the CBSA began investigating them, they claimed to be refugees. As a result, the deportation of 14 suspects have been put on hold until the Immigration Refugee Board decides whether they have legitimate claims for asylum. And so we are here today. The word used to describe this egregious abuse of Canada's asylum system by British Columbia New Democratic Party, so not Conservative, a New Democratic leader, David Eby, was ludicrous. And he's right. And he asked Parliament to do something to change the laws. So to Premier Eby, Conservatives have listened to your call, and we're here today calling on the Liberal government and all members in this place to bar non-citizens convicted from serious crimes from making refugee claims. That seems like a no-brainer. Bar non-citizens who have active judicial proceedings related to serious crimes from making refugee claims. Also a no-brainer. End the practice of giving leniency to non-citizens convicted of serious crimes so that they can avoid deportation and avoid the spirit of the Immigration Refugee Protection Act, and repeals Liberal Bills C5 and C75 to ensure that repeat serious criminals stay in jail so that they don't get released back onto the streets immediately with impunity and the motivation to just serial reoffend. I would also note, Speaker, that Conservatives have also already attempted to get the Liberals to ban non-citizens convicted of serious crime from making asylum claims in an amendment to Bill C12, which is currently before the other place. But the Liberals in this place rejected this amendment, and that's crazy. I know the Liberals today, they'll likely rise and debate and say everything is fine and that laws already cover these issues, but they don't. They don't. And here are the facts. A massive backlog of asylum claims, nearly 300,000, about the entire population of Burnaby, which has been amassed under the Liberal government, means that non-citizens can make asylum claims that take years to process. This includes non-citizens convicted of or who have active legal proceedings for committing serious crimes. And Bill C12, which is currently in the other place, would only in theory prevent non-citizens who have been in Canada for over a year from making asylum claims. It does nothing to stop a non-citizen from entering Canada, committing, especially with ties to transnational gangs, and we know that there are major problems with screening right now, and then committing serious crime within a year and then making a refugee claim. This is why we proposed the amendment that we did, and it's why the Liberals should have accepted that amendment, but they didn't. And that is arguably insane. That is what is fueling this crisis. There's also the massive problem of judges routinely giving lenient sentences to non-citizens convicted of serious crimes in order to avoid deportation, which is already set out as a consequence in the Immigration Refugee Protection Act. I have a simple one-line bill to amend the criminal code that the Liberals could pass today that would stop this practice. And yet, when I raised my bill in the House, the Liberals were so tone deaf that during the debate, the Liberal Deputy Government House Leader made the false claim that judges do not grant special leniences in cases, for example, of sexual assault, and questioned whether or not anyone seriously believed that a rapist would receive preferential treatment because of potential deportation risks. He implied, and Liberals have implied, that these scenarios are far-fetched, but yet the very next day, I was able to rise in this House. I could have given multiple examples, but of one in Barrie, where a non-citizen pleaded guilty of raping a 13-year-old girl and impregnating her twice, but was given an adjournment specifically to evaluate how his guilty plea and sentence would affect his immigration status. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. That is an abrogation of our democratic system and upholding the rule of law and our immigration laws. It is disgusting. And we have had silence from these people over and over again. And Premier Eby is right. It has to change. Why? The fact that the Liberals have not only made this situation worse and empowered it, the fact that they're silent today on this, not doing anything, is why immigration attitudes have hardened in Canada. It's the why. It's the silent thing that nobody wants to talk about, but it's true. It's destroying our pluralism, and it's making the lives of everybody harder, Canadian and newcomer alike, and it has to stop. And that's why we have this motion here in front of the House of Commons today. These things have to change. They're real. They're destroying communities. My colleagues later today will talk about the impacts of what the fact that the Liberals have not repealed Bill C5 and Bill C75. They're bills which have enabled the catch and release justice system that lowered sentences for serious crimes and provide every incentive possible for people to commit serious crimes in Canada and get away with it. By eliminating these deterrents, it signaled to criminals that repercussions are minimal, and it contributed to massive spikes across the country in violent crime, firearms offenses, sexual assaults. Sexual assaults! I thought we would get serious about sexual assault in this place, but no, that bill still stands. There's no deterrent for it, and they won't move. And every time I hear somebody say, like, oh, you know, sexual assault, it's such a thing, or there's no action. Somewhere today, I bet you right now, in Surrey, in Brampton, in Edmonton, in Calgary, somebody is receiving an extortion threat. Somebody has been defrauded of their life savings. And yet, somebody is going to receive catch and release bail or might be able to make a refugee claim.
Unfortunately, the honourable member is out of time. Questions and comments? The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What's disgusting has been the obstruction from the opposition. Back in June, we brought Bill C2, which contains provisions which would not have allowed those asylum claims to be made in Surrey that the member references. Madam Speaker, in Bill C2, which is now, that portion is in C12 and in the House, in the Senate, would not allow any person who has entered Canada over 12 months ago to make an asylum claim. They're ineligible to even file the claim. All of those individuals, those 12 individuals, had been in Canada for over a year. They would have been ineligible had they not obstructed, had they passed that bill back in June, and that is disgusting, Madam Speaker.
For Calgary Nose Hill.
Order. Bill that's in front of the House of Commons. Two things. Number one, it was Conservatives that went to Liberals to separate out the parts that she talked about are Bill C12, not Bill C2. Wrong number one. Wrong number two, Bill C12 does not stop somebody from coming into Canada right now, committing a violent crime, and then making an asylum claim. The other thing is that they have 300,000 people in the refugee claim system right now, which means that it takes, what, years for those claims to be processed. And in those years, those violent criminals can avoid deportation, claim social benefits, and all sorts of other things that make a mockery of Canada's immigration system, our justice system, and hardened attitudes toward immigration. That is disgusting. I can't believe she doesn't even...
Questions et commentaires.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for La Pointe-de-L'Île. Yeah, so I'd like to know from my colleague, you know, in the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, there are already offenses. So asylum seekers who committed offenses either in Canada or outside of Canada are essentially ineligible to stay in Canada. So is this not redundant?
For Calgary Nose Hill.
I welcome the question because it's a good one, and they're not. It's not redundant. In practice and as well as in the law, we need to have an amendment to clarify, to ensure that violent crime, people who are committed of violent crimes cannot claim asylum and do not give lenient sentences. There are many instances now where the Immigration Refugee Protection Act needs modernization. The definition of serious crime needs to be updated so that judges can't use loopholes to give people a leniency and avoid deportation. And also the criminal code needs to be updated as well, which is why I have a private member's bill in front of the House. The Liberals and the House could pass those things today, expedite them, end these processes. I'm very happy to work with my colleague through these bills, but he's wrong. And he's hearing what lawyers and powerful lobby groups who profit off of these systems are saying, and he's not hearing the practical reality of victims.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
She just commented how the minister doesn't even understand or know some of the contents of bills, and it makes me think of C5 and C75, two bills that made house arrest possible and took away mandatory minimums. So I'm wondering if the member has some comments on those two bills and how they are affecting the situation.
Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
I thank you to my colleague for raising these bills. I mean, here's the reality. As I mentioned in my speech, there are many bills in front of the House of Commons that Conservatives have proposed that I think the Liberals have just rejected on blind partisanship. And here's the reality. The Liberals need to stop listening to far-left special interest groups, powerful lobby groups of lawyers who profit off of this system, and start listening to the victims of crime. Premiers like Premier David Eby are saying we need more measures to support these things. There needs to be a reset in thinking that focuses on victims, upholds the sanctity of the law, and Canada's...
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Mount Royal.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my colleague who, as always, gave a very interesting speech. The last part, Part D of the motion, calls for the repeal of Bill C-75, which would essentially put the criminal law back to the state it was before Bill C-75, which did a number of important things, one of which was repeal the body house laws and vagrancy laws that led to the mass jailing of gay men in Toronto and Montreal. Would the member explain to us why the entire Bill C-75 should be repealed as opposed to the part on extortion?
The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill in 20
My
seconds.
question would be, as a member of the government caucus, why the member supported a bill that protected the rights of LGBTQ Canadians, which I fully support, but also made their lives more difficult by catch and releasing criminals that terrorize them. The government often makes these false dichotomies where we have to sacrifice common sense civil liberties or protections that protect victims in order to protect one group of people. I don't buy that, and the member opposite shouldn't either.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for
Cooper for 6 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses. Ms. Lloyd, you indicated that the site task force did not observe foreign interference activities that rose to the level of threatening Canada's ability to have a free and fair election pursuant to the Cabinet Directive on the Critical Election Incident Public Protocol. I would hope you would concede that's a high threshold to meet.
Mr. Chair, through you, thank you for the member's question. The threshold for that determination is set according to the Critical Election Incident Public Protocol, and the job of the site task force members was to ensure that we put all instances of reported threats to Canada's security, be it foreign interference or threats from violent extremism, before the panel for their consideration.
Well, it is a high threshold because it would be national in scope, wouldn't it? We're talking about compromising the ability to have a free and fair election across Canada. That's the standard.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. I believe our colleagues that appeared before you from the panel last week spoke to and gave evidence to that effect. What we want to ensure...
I hope, Ms. Lloyd, with the greatest respect, that you would be familiar enough with the standard to answer yes or no to that.
Thank you to the member for the question. What I will reiterate is that the job of the site member task force was to ensure that we had communicated sufficiently with Canadians such that it was clear that individual candidates, campaigns,
I gave you a very simple, I'm not trying to be adversarial here, but I am trying to get some basic answers, and I cited it's in response to your testimony, where you said the determination was reached that interference activities did not rise to the level of threatening Canada's ability to have a free and fair election. And I asked you first that that's a high standard, and second of all, that in order for that standard to apply, that would encompass threats on a national scope. Straightforward questions. Just an answer, please.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'll reiterate that the determination whether the threshold has been met is one that is made not by the site task force members, but by the panel, and that our responsibility in this process is to ensure that the ability for Canadians, campaigns, and candidates to report to the site
you
task
won't
force.
answer that. The answer to that is yes. It's very clear.
Maybe, Mr. Chair, if you'll permit me to add a little bit of elaboration to the response. I think
I don't need a further elaboration because my time is limited. We know that Beijing targeted Conservative candidate Joe Tay in Don Valley North. In addition to Don Valley North, and how many other ridings were foreign interference activities detected during the 2025 election?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the question. What I can tell the committee is that the site task force ensured that prior to the election, all security cleared representatives of the parties were provided the mechanism to ensure that all campaigns and individual candidates had the ability to report to site instances where they felt that foreign interference or other threats to the election could have
Ms. Lloyd, the site task force gathers intelligence and information. It provides it to the panel. The panel is tasked with the cabinet directive that includes informing candidates, that determines whether to go public, that determines whether threats reach the level of compromising an election on a national scale. I just asked you a simple question. How many ridings, aside from Don Valley North, were targeted?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not able to provide you the number of reports that came into the site task force. What I can assure the committee is that all incidents that were reported by the public, by
Okay,
candidates
if you can't
or
provide a
campaigns
number,
were
then can
provided.
someone on the panel provide a number?
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Isn't it the witness supposed to have the same time as the question to answer?
It's Mr. Cooper's time. We've paused it. It is Mr. Cooper's time to address it. I guess typically that is what the case is. But if there is a lead up and a what is typically a yes or no question or a leading question, as we'd call it back when I was practicing law, it was, I think, a short answer would be expected. So it is the member's time, and I'll turn it back to Mr. Cooper.
maybe if I can add, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So what I can say is that we worked across all our mandates. So each of the agencies who's a member of SITE looked across threats coming to any and all ridings and really made sure that we were putting together that intelligence to inform the panel. I think a very important part of that process this year was coming back and reporting to Canadians, not just on some of the individual issues that came up, but also on the information that gave, as my colleague Ms. Lloyd mentioned previously.
I'm asking a simple question, and Ms. Lloyd referenced the fact that there were interference activities involving transnational repression, other activities, scamming, I think she referred to. And I'm just asking if there were other ridings on the radar of the RCMP on behalf of the security establishment, on behalf of CSIS, Foreign Affairs, that were noted. Were there other ridings? Were there other candidates targeted?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question from the member. As my colleague has mentioned, the site task force members were alert and reported to the panel all instances.
I assume you're
regardless of where they
alert,
occurred.
and I assume you report to the panel. That's your job. But I asked a question, were any ridings, in addition to Don Valley North, were any other candidates targeted? Yes or no?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I mentioned, we were alert and reported all instances across the country in all ridings.
To be a
with
very unproductive meeting because all we're getting
Mr.
is a
Cooper.
stonewalling from the panel, Mr. Chair. And I think that when they, Mr. Chair, I do raise a concern.
Is this a point of order? Is this a point of order?
Point of order.
Point of order, Mr.
That,
Cooper.
when questions are put to witnesses, I think they have a duty to answer when I ask yes or no questions that are straightforward to say, to obstruct, as we saw from this panel. I would just ask that you would direct them to answer questions that are straightforward in nature.
Thank you so much. Sorry, Madame Kabaga, do you wish to?
No,
on
I
the floor?
just hope to get to my turn.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't make the witnesses answer. Your point has been made very clearly, Mr. Cooper. I have been in similar positions as a member of the committee to witnesses. Members are here; they are elected to represent their constituents. If there are reasons, be it for national security issues that are classified, perhaps those can be explained. But the expectation from members of this committee, if those issues are not classified, if they are not something that that members' questions should be addressed specifically, we have a lot of time left, and it will be a long committee meeting if this information isn't classified and members' questions aren't answered. So on that point, we will turn to Madame Kabaga for 6 minutes, please.
To meet all the witnesses. Nice to see some of you again who have been here before. I'm just picking up on where Mr. Cooper left off. I think Canadians are quite concerned about this example of Don Valley North. It was shocking to me, frankly, and it's shocking to many of my constituents as a new member of Parliament that I talked to. So in what other constituencies were foreign interference activities detected during the 2025 election?
Chair, and to the member for the follow-up question. Perhaps I'll answer it this way. It's important to remind Canadians that the Site Member Task Force investigate threat activities of foreign states as it relates to foreign interference and individual entities that are of concern from the violent extremism perspective. And so we did say during the tech briefings that in not all instances would we be able to share the detail of where we detected those occurrences with Canadians.
Why would that be the case? Why would you not be able to share with Canadians whether their constituency was targeted by a foreign state or not? I don't understand the lack of transparency there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. If you'll permit me to finish. What we were trying to balance in terms of the instances where we did speak publicly, and we did so on 2 occasions out of the 5 appearances we had, were a number of concerns. One, we wanted to ensure that when we did speak publicly, we were not unduly amplifying the messages of foreign interference actors by contributing to the dialogue. Second, in some instances, we need to ensure that we are ensuring the integrity of national security investigations.
But I understand that during the election, ma'am, I really do. But we're well past the election now. The results are finalized, certified. They're in government. We're not. It's pretty final. So I don't understand now why you cannot share that. Just give us the number of seats.
Maybe I can pop in and provide a bit of additional context. So thank you very much for the question. We look all the time at threats. So while SITE stands up for enhanced monitoring during an election period or a by-election period, we all work together as colleagues, and our teams all work together as colleagues all the time. And if we see any threat, whether it be a foreign interference threat, for example, threatening our democratic processes, it's something that we would work together to address under our own mandates at any time.
So was my seat targeted? Do you think I have the right to know that as a member of Parliament?
So what I can tell thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So what I can tell the member is that during the course of the election, the security cleared representatives of each and all the parties were provided both with unclassified and classified briefs, and we ensured that any information that was reported to the Site Task Force was understood during those conversations. And on the question of what is the impact, as my colleague said, post-election, as we have heard in testimony and our minister has also said, the Minister of Public Safety, foreign interference itself is a threat that is persistent and pervasive, and that was also a conclusion of Commissioner Hogue. And so, as my colleague Bridget said, we do need to ensure that as we share information, necessary information to equip Canadians to be resilient against those threats, we are ensuring that we do not compromise.
Okay, so I've got one more question. In terms of, Madame Drouin was here last week and testified at committee that countermeasures were deployed that disrupted or even neutralized attempts at foreign interference in certain constituencies. Will you tell us where those countermeasures were deployed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that I will frustrate the member with my answer, but it is important that we maintain as operational agencies the ability to protect our methodologies and our investigations that are an ongoing effort to ensure that Canadians are protected from the efforts of hostile states. And so I will not, for the reasons of protecting the integrity of those efforts, share the details of where we applied each and every instance of our interventions to protect Canadians during the election period.
So thank you for that. Was very clear, actually. So I appreciate that answer. I just find it very concerning that countermeasures aside, you will not tell Canadians which constituencies were targeted. And like the Don Valley North example was not shared as widely as perhaps you think it was, as many of us were shocked to learn of the details. And so if there are other constituencies that are subjected to either threats during an election period or ongoing, I believe, and I think most of us believe, that Canadians have the right to know what those constituencies are that are being targeted by foreign states. And I'd strongly encourage you folks to reconsider being more accountable and publicly transparent about sharing those constituencies. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Cooper for 5 minutes, please.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to continue where I left off, and I'm going to
Gang, we're going to cross over here now to the question period. Just get this lined up, and here we go. We're off.
Recognizing farmers and agri-food workers. While this should be a day of celebration, this government has instead allowed Canada to lead the G7 in food inflation. This is not a failure of Canada's farmers or our agricultural sector. It is the result of short-sighted government policies. Rather than cutting costs where they actually matter, this government is piling them on. The industrial carbon tax, labeling and packaging regulations, and the fuel standards tax drive up the cost of groceries. At the same time, Ottawa's cutting in the wrong places. CFIA's decision to scrap destination inspection services without industry consultation, along with Ag Research Centre closures, undermines reliability, competitiveness, and trust in Canada's food quality. This makes Canada a weaker trading partner, leading to higher prices. If the government is serious about food affordability and security, it must stop making short-sighted decisions from Ottawa and start listening to the people who actually provide our food. Canada's farmers don't need to be managed, they need to be heard.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver Centre.
Mr. Speaker, cardiovascular disease, CVD, remains one of the greatest health challenges facing Canadians today. Currently, 1 in 12 adults, 2.6 million people, live with CVD. 9 in 10 Canadians over age 20 have at least one risk factor. More than 750,000 Canadians live with heart failure and 1 million with atrial fibrillation. 9 out of 10 over age 20 are at risk. CVD is one of the main causes of hospitalization and loss of productivity, costing the healthcare system over $21 billion a year. Early detection in high-risk populations can prevent and delay disease, reduce the cost of treatment, improve quality of life, and save millions of lives. The Canadian Cardiovascular Society and the University of Ottawa Heart Institute partnered with our speaker to offer heart risk assessments in West Block today until 4 p.m. I encourage you to go. The life you save may be your own.
The Honourable Member for Essex.
Speaker, 24,000 auto workers in Essex, Windsor are once again being asked to pay for the Liberals' failed patchwork EV policy. These are workers who did everything right. They built the strongest automotive ecosystems in North America, yet this government continues to ship Canadian dollars out of the country, sending a clear message to our workers: they aren't good enough. The 49,000 Chinese EVs that the Liberals allowed to flood our market are projected to make up to 30% of our EV sales this year without end-of-life safeguards in place. It doesn't stop there. They're handing up to up to $2.3 billion in subsidies for EVs made in the United States. And just after the Liberals re-announced their EV policy, Stellantis sold its stake in the Nexstar battery plant and shut down plug-in hybrid production in Windsor. This is not a coincidence. This is a failure. So, Speaker, let's be clear. Who benefits from this EV policy? The United States, China benefits, and who pays? The people of Essex.
The honourable member for King Hants.
Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute to the late Dr. Geraldine Browning, a prominent and beloved member of our community in King's Hants who passed away on December 31st, 2025. Born and raised in the historic African Nova Scotian community of East Preston, Geraldine began her career in nursing in Montreal before meeting her husband, Orville. Together, they raised 9 children and lived a military life before moving to and building a house in Gibson Woods. Faith was a cornerstone of Geraldine's life, and Sundays at the Browning household were spent at the United Baptist Church, where she was a prominent member of the congregation. Despite living a busy life, Geraldine consistently gave back to her community. She led several key organizations supporting the African Nova Scotian community, including the Black Cultural Society, the Black Business Initiative, and the Valley African Nova Scotia Development Association, VANSTA. For her public service, Geraldine was awarded the Order of Nova Scotia, an honorary doctorate degree from Acadia University, and the Queen's Diamond and Platinum Jubilee medals. Geraldine made a difference in this world and will be dearly missed. I extend my condolences to Geraldine's family and the broader community in her passing. Thank you.
The honourable member for Mission Matsqui Abbotsford.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is facing a surge in violent extortion that is shaking communities across the country. Families and small business owners in my own community are living with a level of fear they have never known before. Extortion has risen by 330% since the Liberals were elected. In British Columbia, it has climbed to more than 480%. In BC, 14 accused extortionists have paused removal by claiming refugee status, exposing the blatant abuse of our asylum system. Canadians deserve to feel safe in their homes, on their streets, and in their places of work. We owe it to them to strengthen protections and ensure that violent offenders face meaningful consequences. This is why our Conservative demotion demands the government close loopholes exploited by serious offenders, repeals Bill C5 and C75, end repeat offender cycles, and ensure violent criminals cannot use the system to delay or avoid removal from Canada. We also refuse to let the Liberals play politics with the safety and security of Canadians any longer.
The honourable member for Humber River Black Creek.
Mr. Speaker, I stand with voices around the world in denouncing the unjust and politically driven sentencing of Jimmy Lai, the latest chapter in the erosion of Hong Kong's freedom and independence. This outcome was not inevitable. For years, advocates globally have called for the release of Jimmy Lai, and this pressure from the international community must continue. This is a clear violation of the Sino-British Joint Declaration, a legally binding treaty lodged with the United Nations. Sentencing a 78-year-old newspaper publisher to 20 years in prison for peaceful expression is not the justified rule of law. It is repression. I urge democratic societies to answer this abuse with coordinated diplomatic measures and accountability. Jimmy Lai's case makes clear that Hong Kong's courts now operate fully under Beijing's control. I extend my deepest sympathies to his family and reaffirm my commitment to seeking his release alongside all those imprisoned for their beliefs in Hong Kong. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, all Canadians deserve affordable groceries. Last week, I asked the Prime Minister, why does Canada have the worst food inflation of all G7 countries? Why do grocery prices in Canada rise faster than they do in all other G7 countries? The Prime Minister answered that it's because of our weak dollar. Well, he's accountable for our dollar. How did he make the dollar weak? Was it by doubling our deficit? Was it by keeping all anti-development legislation in place, blocking industry, blocking exports? Why is our dollar weak, and why are groceries so expensive? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, our currency has been increasing. Our dollar has been increasing since this government was elected. That's my first point. Second point, we have an economic plan. Our government's plan will invest in Canada. We will make Canada an energy superpower. We are finding new partnerships around the world.
Leader of the Opposition.
Encore des beaux slogans,
Lovely slogans, yet again, Mr. Speaker, but that wasn't an answer. I can always admire a good slogan, but here's the truth. He said himself that the dollar is weak, and he's the one who cannot explain why that is so. He cannot explain why, after 1 year in office for him, food inflation has doubled. And we have the fastest rising grocery prices in the G7. So, once again, I ask the question, why do Canadians have the fastest rising grocery prices in the G7? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, here is a little bit of Economy 101 for the opposition leader. There's a bit of a lag, and in fact, the party across the way engaged in so much obstruction during the last parliament that now there's an effect of that. But now growth is on the rise, salaries are rising, we're creating jobs.
Now he's claiming that it's the official opposition that lowered the dollar, Mr. Speaker. Another excuse from a man whose results do not live up to his rhetoric. The same is true on crime. After 10 years of Liberals, extortion is up 333% because of lax Liberal laws and immigration. And now Liberals are obstructing a solution. Today we're proposing a motion to ensure that no one accused or convicted of a crime can claim refugee status. Will the Prime Minister stop obstructing this motion so we can kick extortionists out and bring safety to our streets?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad the Leader of the Opposition brought up obstruction. It is the obstruction of the Opposition which is delaying the 6 bills before the House and Senate that will address extortion, that will tighten bail, that will tighten sentencing against extortion, and very importantly, consistent with every major police force in this country, consistent with the mayor of the large cities, which introduced lawful access, which they've consistently stopped in favor of extortion.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he's blocking his own bills and failing to move ahead because Liberals do not want to repeal Liberal bail, Liberal house arrest, and Liberal immigration. But we have a motion before the House of Commons today, and it would, A, bar non-citizens convicted of a serious offence from claiming refugee status. B, bar the same people who have been charged from claiming refugee status. And C, stop judges from giving sentencing discounts to people because they are from abroad. Which of these 3 things does the Prime Minister oppose? And if it's none, why obstruct?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this side of the House supports taking control over immigration, which is why asylum seekers are down 50%. That's right. Which is why temporary foreign workers are down 50%. Which is why students and temporary residents are down by over 50%. First point. Second point, this side of the House supports tightening sentencing, tightening bail for violent crimes, for extortion, for sextortion. Join us.
Hear, hear. Leader of the Opposition.
And he's done none of those things. And by the way, all those numbers are up compared to when the previous Conservative government was in office. Now, on to jobs for Canadians. Our auto workers are losing their jobs in Ingersoll, in Oshawa, and elsewhere because of American tariffs. The Prime Minister is helping the U.S. take away these jobs by forcing Canadian taxpayers to spend $2.3 billion on subsidies for American and other foreign-made electric vehicles. Why not scrap this subsidy for foreign-made vehicles and take taxes off vehicles made here in Canada?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this government is investing $3 billion in Canadian automakers.
Yeah.
We are investing not in the auto industry of the past, but the auto industry of the future. The auto industry of the future is electric. It is connected. We are building out the entire supply chain.
That's right.
And as this House will see in the coming weeks, we are building out the electricity grid with, wait for it, in the spirit of cooperative federalism with the provinces.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the auto workers are waiting for it. They're waiting for their jobs.
Yeah.
But this Prime Minister is subsidizing electric vehicles whose sales are in full collapse and that are made outside of Canada. Imagine being an auto worker looking at high taxes on his severance after he's lost his job and knowing that billions of those dollars will be going to subsidize vehicles made in the very country that tariffed him out of work. Why doesn't he find his elbows and do the right thing for a change and actually take taxes off of Canadian-made automobiles, not subsidize foreign ones?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I would suggest that if any extremities are going to be removed, it's the fingers from the ears of the Leader of the Opposition. The Leader of the Opposition could listen to the head of the Auto Manufacturing Association. He could listen to the Conservative Premier of Ontario, the heartland of Canadian auto manufacturing. He could listen to the entire sector that knows that our investments, $3 billion, our investments up the supply chain, our investments in the grid are going to drive our sector forward to the future.
L'honorable député de...
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, a few weeks ago, the Prime Minister made a speech in Davos. The speech was about the hypocrisy of great major empires. Most people agreed with the basic principles of his speech, which were quite interesting. But I'd like the Prime Minister to be consistent in his speech without naming names. And in other circumstances, the Prime Minister did name names. Basically, he said that the United States was no longer the same reliable economic and military partner that they once were. Today, we found out that the government will be giving more F-35 contracts to the United States without even suspending the contract.
Premier Ministre.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, first, some information. The sentence that the member just said was not in my speech. Second point, as for F-35s, yes, the government is making some expenditures to keep options open. That's what we need to do for our defense. It's useful for our negotiations with Americans as well. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. All right, well, I'll change my wording, and maybe the answer will have different wording too, such that I'll be able to understand it. The Prime Minister feels that the United States are no longer a reliable partner. If that is the case, then does it make sense for this government to follow up on a study that this Prime Minister himself put on hold to review? Meanwhile, the President of the United States just said that he would block a Canada-US bill just based on his mood today. How does the government feel because they're not walking their own talk? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, this question gives me the opportunity to inform this Parliament about something. I had a conversation with the American president just this morning. I informed him that Canada built that bridge and paid for it, for the Gordie Howe Bridge, that is. I also told the president that we are co-owners of the bridge with the state of Michigan. At third, I told him that there were American and Canadian workers who contributed to the bridge. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Well, that doesn't work, Mr. Speaker. It's all well and good for Canada to say to the U.S. president, We built that bridge with you. You're now attacking the bridge. Now we're going to buy some of your planes that you will be in control of, even though you're not a good partner. Should this government not be nationalist, defend Canada as it claims to? Should they not put the contract for F-35s on hold until relations become normal again? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the situation is easy to understand. It's clear. Our government is currently reviewing the F-35 contracts. The Government of Canada has other options. There are other options which can protect Canadians and also boost our economy, especially in Quebec.
The honourable member for Calgary East.
Liberal deficits and taxes drove up inflation and food bank usage. Canada has the highest food inflation in the entire G7, double the US. Canadians spend more on Liberal taxes than on all basic essentials combined. Consumer bankruptcies are rising, and bankruptcy proposals are at levels not seen since the 2008 financial crisis. When will the Liberals scrap the taxes and inflationary deficits that are driving more Canadians into bankruptcy?
L'honorable ministre des Finances.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
No listen from these conservatives. No listen from these conservatives. The first thing that this government did under this Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, was to cut tax for 22 million Canadians, Mr. Speaker. They know it, Canadians know it, we know it, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we're going to build this country, we're going to empower Canadians, and we will protect our sovereignty. We believe in Canada, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Calgary East.
Believing the Liberals are helping Canadians is as ridiculous as believing the budget will balance itself. And this Prime Minister doubled Justin Trudeau's deficit, while consumer debt skyrocketed last year. Liberal deficits and taxes are forcing Canadians to borrow more, racking up their credit cards just to get by. Non-mortgage debt has exploded to $675 billion. Wow. That's why Canadians are the most indebted in the entire G7. How many more Canadians need to go broke and bankrupt before the Liberals stop driving up the cost of living?
Honorable Ministre des Finances.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
I'll have a simple answer. Move on, man. Move on, you know. That's, honestly, change the QP card. I can give you some advice, Mr. Speaker. Move on. And I have good news, Mr. Speaker. I know it's only Tuesday, but Canada is forecasted to have the second fastest growth in the G7. This is under this Prime Minister, under this government, under this team, which is building Canada like never before. We will build at scale, we will build at speed, and we will build a Canada that we can all be proud of, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Chilliwack Hope.
These Liberals keep telling Canadians that they've never had it so good. Well, not only has food inflation doubled since this Prime Minister took office, it's now twice as high in Canada as it is in the United States. It's driving over 2 million people a month to the food banks. I guess they should just move on from that. And now we learn that more and more Canadians have been forced into bankruptcy and bankruptcy proposals. In my province of British Columbia, they're up over 10% in the last year alone. When will this government stop pushing people to the brink and cut the taxes and red tape that is pushing Canadians into bankruptcy?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Squad Speaker, they want to talk about taxes. We cut taxes for 22 million Canadians. They voted against it. We cut the GST for first-time home buyers, the consumer carbon tax. Last week, we launched the groceries and essentials benefit that will put up to $1,900 in the pockets of Canadians. Mr. Speaker, we're focused on affordability for Canadians. They're focused on continued obstruction.
The honourable member for Chilliwack Hope.
The Liberal plan isn't working. Over 2 million Canadians a month are using the food bank. The cost of groceries has skyrocketed to over $340 a week for a family of 4, and the small minority of Canadians that get that recycled rebate that he was talking about will only get $10 a week, which isn't going to keep their creditors at bay. Now bankruptcies and bankruptcy proposals are at their highest levels since the global financial crisis. So when will the Liberals finally cut taxes and red tape and stop pushing record numbers of Canadians into bankruptcy?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, from a member and his leader who supported giving the child benefit to millionaires.
That's right.
They voted against dental program, the daycare program, housing. The list goes on and on. On this side of the House, we're going to continue to focus and deliver on affordability. That party is focused in obstruction and slogans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Okanagan Lake West, South Kelowna.
Mr. Speaker, after 10 years of Liberal government, food inflation is double what it was when the Prime Minister took office and double that of the United States. Food bank use has more than doubled, and now bankruptcies are up, the highest they've been since the financial crisis, clocking in at a shocking 10.6% at British Columbia. Will the government admit that its taxes and deficits are driving Canadians into the food bank and into bankruptcy, or will it just claim that everything is fine, proving that it's totally out of touch with reality?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Seniors.
You know what, Mr. Speaker, I'll bite. Let's imagine what affordability would look like under the Conservatives in British Columbia. They would cut the industrial carbon tax, and you know what would happen? Nothing, because it doesn't affect the price of groceries. And then they would follow their plan to get out of the way, aka do nothing. No national school food program, no OAS for 65 to 67, no groceries and essentials benefit. From what I've heard, all the Conservatives would offer is thoughts and prayers. Oh wait, no, they would also obstruct as they currently are.
The Honourable Member for York Durham.
Mr. Speaker, the hubris of the finance minister and his response. We will not move on from the issues that are affecting Canadians.
Yeah.
How about he should take the advice of the Prime Minister and look inside himself? Fresh data from the Superintendent of Bankruptcy in this country says that prevents a very grim truth, Mr. Speaker. Bankruptcies are rising, consumer proposals are rising. Canadians can literally no longer afford this profligate Liberal government. So when will they cut the taxes, get out of the way, get rid of the industrial carbon tax, the fuel standard tax, stop obstructing our ideas?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for Women and Gender Equality.
Mr. Speaker, our budget will deliver generational investments for the province of Ontario, and that member who's from Ontario voted against these measures in our Budget Implementation Act. Through the Build Canada Homes, we're creating thousands of affordable homes, including the Arbo Downsview project. Again, the member opposed 40% affordable homes being developed, and we will use Canadian steel, Canadian lumber, and Canadian aluminum. We're protecting Ontario's steel industry, and we're also stopping competition from foreign steel and keeping good-paying jobs in this country. That is how we build Canada strong, Mr. Speaker, and we will continue to do that.
The Honourable Member for Newmarket Aurora.
Consumer bankruptcies are up to the highest level since the financial crisis. That's 141,000 Canadians that are losing their homes, their savings, and their sense of security. Clearly, the Liberals' Band-Aid programs are not enough to prevent bankruptcies. Canadians need long-term solutions that bring down the cost of food and housing. When will this Liberal government stop the inflationary deficits, scrap the taxes, and remove the bureaucratic roadblocks that are making life so unaffordable?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for Women and Gender Equality.
Mr. Speaker, again, this member is also from Ontario and voted against our budget that will make generational investments. We are making investments in our economy. We're protecting our communities and empowering Canadians, and the members opposite continue to obstruct this progress. We're creating jobs in clean energy through the Darlington Nuclear Project. That is going to help support 1.2 million homes, create thousands of jobs in this country. They should stop opposing these measures so they can help support Ontarians and support Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Shefford. Mr. Speaker, according to the government, 85,000 retirees are experiencing issues with their OAS payments because of the EhrenEmm software, in some cases for 9 months. Yesterday, we found out why it's been going on for so long. The government House Leader responded that the errors would be corrected, and I quote, "If there are mistakes, if there are any cases, well, we would know about them." Mr. Speaker, his own government says that there are 85,000 people affected, yet he is still in denial. Do you see now, Mr. Speaker, why nothing ever gets done in Ottawa?
L'honorable leader du gouvernement La Chambre.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Il paraît qu'on a un problème.
It seems that the Bloc Québécois has a problem. They are misquoting people today. Mr. Speaker, of course we take each and every case seriously, but what I wish to reconfirm and guarantee all Canadians and Quebecers, and I'm speaking to all those who receive OAS, I'd like to inform them that we modernized our IT system, our software. If there are errors, we will of course correct them. I encourage colleagues from all parties to tell us about any cases which need to be resolved in order to help people. The Honourable Member for Shefford. Mr. Speaker, according to the government's own estimates, there are 85,000 pensioners whose payments have been affected because of EhrenEmm. That's 85,000 people who are being affected by software that has gone over budget by almost $5 billion. In Quebec City, or in Quebec, rather, province, a commission of inquiry would have been set up a long time ago. But the leader of the government thinks that everything's hunky-dory. He's practically congratulating himself because, well, if 85,000 retirees are experiencing problems, that means that all the others are doing fine. How out of touch does the government have to be to believe that causing problems for 85,000 people is no big deal?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Seniors.
We are modernizing a very old system. If we had not taken action, that would have jeopardized the payments of millions of seniors. Now, there will be retroactive payments and any issues will be corrected. Once again, I encourage the member across the way to give me names of those affected, and we will be able to help them.
Mr. Speaker, extortion is out of control in this country. Small business owners are being threatened, firebombed, shot at, living in fear, and many are contemplating leaving this country. And yet the Liberal government refuses to take this crisis seriously. Some of these criminals who should be deported are now exploiting the refugee system with false claims in order to stay in Canada. Now, we tried to close these loopholes, but the Liberals continue to obstruct. Will the government support our motion to protect Canadians from dangerous non-citizens by closing this loophole and finally ending these bogus refugee claims?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, we are very concerned about this issue, and therefore we're doing everything possible by bringing legislation that will tighten bail, by imposing stricter sentences. But the one bill that's been missing is C2. C2 we tabled in the House back in June, and if these Conservatives were serious about solving the problem, rather than this window covering that they brought with this motion, that essentially is moot because of C12, which already does everything they're asking for, they would approve lawful access. They would consent today to moving that bill forward. Will they allow the vote, pass the bill, and catch the criminals?
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Gateway.
Mr. Speaker, we've heard for 10 years of Liberal excuses and blaming others, but Canadians continue to live in fear as criminals threaten their families, their businesses, and communities. Serious non-citizen offenders are exploiting loopholes in the refugee system to stay in the country, leaving Canadians vulnerable. Will the Liberals finally work with us to pass this motion to ban these non-citizen criminals from making false refugee claims and ensure Canadians are protected from dangerous offenders who should be deported?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, yet another Conservative that probably needs to remove his fingers from the ears, because we've already solved this problem.
That's right.
In C12, Mr. Speaker, essentially all of these criminals would not be allowed to apply for asylum. Even in the cases where we've heard in BC where they have applied for asylum, they would not have been able to had the Conservatives not obstructed and passed C2 when we had tabled it. But because they obstructed, they've been able to make those claims. But guess what, Mr. Speaker? Good news, because it's in the Senate, and once it's passed, those claims, those cases will be cancelled.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Kamloops, Thompson-Nicola.
Extortion is out of control in my home province of BC. Their extortion rates are up 482% since the Liberals took power. Now, the Prime Minister about 10 minutes ago said, we are tough on extortion. Mr. Speaker, perhaps somebody should remind him that the Liberals voted to repeal a mandatory jail sentence for extortion with a firearm so people could serve their sentence on house arrest. That is the opposite of being hard on extortion. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister support our common common sense solution to ensure that those convicted of serious crimes cannot claim refugee status? Yes or no?
Secretary of State for International Development.
Mr. Speaker, I find it pretty amazing that legislators on the other side don't know the legislation that's already here. Right. You cannot claim asylum when you're charged. It gets suspended. Wow. You go to trial, you get sentenced, and you get deported. You cannot claim asylum when you are charged. That's the law, even before the legislation before the House that's going to make it more restrictive and even more onerous for those that claim extortion.
The honourable member for Cloverdale Langley City.
Picture a city with gangs demanding protection money from small businesses, where shots are fired at homes, where families fear going out at night, and people are forced to change their cars and their routines. Sounds like I'm describing a slum in the third world country, but it's my hometown of Surrey. What's worse is when these thugs are caught, they are right back on the street after claiming refugee status. Will the Liberals support our motion that those charged with or convicted of serious crimes cannot exploit the refugee system in order to stay in Canada?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, when I speak to the police chief in that jurisdiction, when I speak to the mayor in that jurisdiction, when I speak to the premier of that province, they ask, can you get them to pass C2? Wow. Can you get them lawful access? Can you get them to pass the bills in this House? They don't want this obstruction, Mr. Speaker. I ask you to urge the Conservatives to support these legislations so we can give the police the tools they need to prosecute and enforce the laws of this land and kick these extortionists out.
The honourable member for Calgary Skyview.
Mr. Speaker, extortion is up 330% since Liberals took office. Small business owners in places like Brampton, Surrey, Vancouver, and my home of Calgary are being threatened. Families are being shot at and firebombed. And Liberals have done nothing. Even the Premier of BC has said the Liberals must stop criminals from gaining refugee status. Will the Liberals support our motion to protect communities by ensuring convicted criminals cannot use our refugee status to stay in Canada? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
When we want to talk about the position of the Premier of British Columbia when it comes to our criminal justice reform agenda, I'd advise the honourable member that he didn't just support the legislation, he asked if he could join us for a press conference to celebrate the achievements of that legislation. But Mr. Speaker, if the member is interested in doing more to combat extortion, he can help accelerate the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act, which tightens bail for violent extortion and hardens sentences for offenders. He could support the Strong Borders Act, which Patrick Brown, the Mayor of Brampton, asked me to pass a message to the Conservatives that the Peel Regional Police want lawful access in this country so they can bust extortion rings, not just punish bad actors after a crime's committed, but stop them in the first instance.
The honourable member for Longueuil Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, February 7th marked the end of the mandate of the Presidential Transitional Council in Haiti, as well as a new stage in the political transition with the transfer of power to Prime Minister Fils-Aimé. As Haitians continue to face uncertainty about their country's future and the security situation continues to deteriorate, can the Minister of Foreign Affairs tell us how Canada will continue to support the Haitian people throughout this democratic transition and security stabilization process? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Speaker, this transition is an important step toward stability in Haiti, including general elections. Canada is a global leader, and we have invested $450 million for stability in Haiti. We are working closely with the Haitian diaspora as well. We are committed to fighting for a healthier and safer future for Haitians, and I'd like to thank my colleague here in the House.
The honourable member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, despite the Liberal government signing on to up to $52 billion to build an electric vehicle supply chain in Canada, the wheels are falling off most of those deals, and the vast majority of EVs are built elsewhere. But now, with the Liberals are expecting Liberal Canadians to buy into this $2.3 billion subsidy program for foreign-made EVs. Why is the Liberal government expecting working Canadians to subsidize their $2.3 billion subsidy for foreign-made EVs, including in the U.S., Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
We believe in affordability and we believe in electrification. And we just don't understand why the Conservatives are so much against electrification at a time where in 5 years, 40% of all the cars sold worldwide will be EVs. And so we won't hold back our auto workers. We will invest in the future of the sector. We will make sure that we leapfrog what is going on in the United States, and we'll create jobs across the country.
The honourable member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, the minister is not addressing the issue. So allow me to be clear. Under Conservatives, not a single taxpayer dollar would go to subsidize the American EV market. And yet that's precisely what the $2.3 billion subsidy they've just introduced will do. There are not a lot of EVs made in this country. They're made elsewhere, including in the U.S., which is eligible for this $2.3 billion subsidy. Will the minister change course, or will working Canadians be expected to fund the American auto market?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
We all know that the auto workers are building the best cars in the world for the world. But we all know that the auto sector is completely integrated within North America. Is my colleague saying right now, calling for a boycott against American EVs that are made with Canadian parts by Canadian auto workers? Is that what she's suggesting?
That's it.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent Aquaranac. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government has announced $2.3 billion in subsidies from Canadian workers for the purchase of EVs. Is the government aware that with this, there are U.S. EVs that will be subsidized? Need I remind the government that that there is a terrible trade war because of Donald Trump, and that to date, this has cost 5,000 jobs. Why subsidize U.S. cars then? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, it's surprising to finally hear this after 1 year of a trade war denounce tariffs on the Canadian automotive sector. But we have a plan supported by the entire industry, by unions, and by the Premier of Ontario, where this industry is positioned, and by environmentalists. We agree with the fact that we have to invest in electrification of transportation in this sector because we know that globally this is where investment is happening and we are following where the capital is going. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent Aquarin. Mr. Speaker, she forgot a name in the people who agree with this plan, President Trump, because he's going to be benefiting from these subsidies. The reality is that if the minister really wants to help workers, if she really wants to help this industry and help Canadian families to buy a car, why not take our proposal to cutting GST on cars made in Canada? That would be concrete and give results. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we're helping already the automotive sector with $3 billion, and we're going to continue to support it. There are 5,000 people in Ontario and elsewhere in Quebec who will be supported, and we agree with the fact that we have to make more investment in transportation electrification because it creates jobs in our province. And my colleague has to understand that the automotive sector in North America is fully integrated. So is he calling for a boycott of EVs made in the U.S.? Is he saying that those who work in the automotive sector for car parts, inaudible?
The Honourable Member for Simcoe North.
Speaker, the auto sector is half the size it is today when the Liberals took office. President Trump has launched a sustained and unjustified attack on Canada's auto sector. His stated goal is to take Canadian auto jobs and put them in the U.S. And now the government is going to use taxpayer money to subsidize electric vehicles made outside of Canada. Thousands of these rebate checks will end up in American pockets. Does the minister really believe that we should be using taxpayer money to reward President Trump's behavior?
Yeah, hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Speaker, it is shocking that the opposition does not recognize the measures that this government has taken to support the auto sector, to support workers, to make sure that we're investing in national projects, while they vote against us every single time. Mr. Speaker, we have an auto strategy, we have a liquidity management fund, we are reducing tariffs, and we are making sure we are building Canada strong. We urge them to get on board.
Member for Oxford.
Mr. Speaker, under this Liberal government, Canadian auto production is down by half. Mass auto layoffs in Oshawa, Brampton, and Ingersoll are devastating our communities. We gave the minister a very reasonable solution to help with auto workers. Under Section 153 of the Income Tax Act, he can bring forward a regulatory change to reduce the mandatory withholding rate on lump sum severances for impacted workers. But the Minister of Finance rejected it. Why?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Speaker, I come from a riding, and and let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, they want this government to keep doing what we have been doing, which is to support auto workers, support unions, support auto manufacturing, and to ensure that we are together building Canada strong. That's what we do in times of economic stress. We band together, and on this side of the House, we urge them, vote with us, vote for Canada, vote for national projects, and build Canada with us.
The Honourable Member for Oxford.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance called standing with auto workers political malpractice. It's easy to talk about that here in Ottawa, but try saying that to the worker who lost their job. Say that to the worker who can't feed their family. Say that to the worker who can't pay for their mortgages. Yet this government is sending billions of their tax dollars outside of Canada to fund foreign jobs and foreign projects. Canadian workers feel betrayed. So will the minister just drop the rhetoric, work with us, and stand for Canadian workers?
The Honourable Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation.
Breaking news for the opposition. Mr. Speaker, we're in a trade war, and maybe instead of talking down the Canadian economy, talking down workers, they should join us and build it up. We are investing $3 billion in the auto sector. We are backing companies who choose to build here. I was just in Bradford, Ontario, where we invested in Cpac, Canada. They employ 280 Canadians, and they support our plan to build in Canada, buy in Canada, and believe in Canada. They ought to try it.
The Honourable Member for Stormont, Dundas, Glengarry.
The Liberals providing billions in rebates for American-made EVs coming into Canada is anything but elbows up. This at a time when Donald Trump is tariffing every single Canadian auto going into the United States. Furthermore, working-class Canadians are now being forced to subsidize $50,000 cars they can't afford so wealthy people can buy them. Wow. In an affordability crisis, this makes no sense. In a trade war, this makes even less sense. When will the Liberals reverse course on this ridiculous policy that gives American-made EVs a subsidy and leaves Canadian workers paying the bill?
The Honourable Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, the only party going in reverse is the Conservatives. We're going to move forward. We're going to drive forward by investing in the Canadian auto sector. We have a plan to invest $3 billion in this auto sector. We are making sure that we are building the cars of the future. We're not only building the cars of the future, we're building affordable homes. We're making sure that families can put food on the table. This is called Building Canada. They're blocking all those. Get on board, stop blocking, start building Canada. Join us.
The Honourable Member for Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, they're not investing in Canadian auto workers. They're subsidizing Tesla. Canadians are watching our auto sector get hammered by Trump slapping illegal, unjustified tariffs on Canadian-built cars, putting paychecks at risk in Ontario and in Kitchener. Yet while Trump punishes Canadian workers, this government is rewarding the U.S. auto sector. I'm wondering, whose side are they on? Can this government please explain why, at a time when Canadians need action, it is choosing to use taxpayer dollars to subsidize American-made vehicles? Why?
Honourable Secretary of State for Labour.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians have created over 160,000 jobs since September. Wages are rising. Inflation is within target range. Mr. Speaker, we know that certain sectors in the economy are facing impacts from the tariffs, from the trade war. But we have a plan, Mr. Speaker, a plan that invests in workers that's in our budget, Mr. Speaker. That party's voted against it. Unfortunately, they keep blocking the budget, Mr. Speaker. So if that member wants to make a difference, if she wants to help workers, Mr. Speaker, it's important that they pass the budget. Let's go, pass the budget. Let's stay all night, pass the budget.
The Honourable Member for Mont-Saint-Bruno-L'Acadie. Mr. Speaker, the announcement of our government's new automotive sector marks a turning point for the Canadian automotive sector. We're focusing on what we can control here to bring more clarity to our industry. Can the Minister of Industry explain why we're helping our industry be more resilient and ensure our economic sovereignty? The Honourable Ministry of Industry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague from Mont-Saint-Bruno-L'Acadie for his excellent work. He's very active in the Automotive Caucus, and he's asking me a question about the automotive strategy. It's an excellent one. It focuses on two objectives. First, production in Canada, and second, electrification, because we believe that's where the industry is heading. And we don't want to be just victims of decisions from the White House. So we're going to be here for our automotive sector in Ontario, but across Quebec as well. The Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabaska. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After the Minister has said, give us names, I gave her two this week. For months, 86,000 seniors have been waiting for their pensions and their guaranteed income supplements. And the Minister has said they're modernizing this system, but the cost went from $1.6 billion to $6.6 billion. The money they're spending is Canadian taxpayers' money that's hard-earned. Meanwhile, our seniors are waiting to pay for their rents, groceries. So who is responsible for this financial fiasco? And he's going to stand up and apologize for this. The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families. I'll be happy to sit down with the member across the way, but it's not true.
Budget, Mr. Speaker, for this modernization of a 60-year-old system, migrating more than 7.5 million Canadians to this new system. Of course, as we see challenges with specific applications, maybe information is incorrect, maybe they're paper applications, the department is working urgently on those cases. And if any MP here has a constituent who is not receiving their benefits in time and is in urgent need, please reach out to my office. We'd be happy to help. Canadians can also contact Service Canada.
The Honourable Member for Montmorency-Charlevoix. Valentine's Day is fast approaching, but love is clearly not in the air for the Liberals. Just ask the 86,000 retirees who are anything but enamored with the new EhrenEmm software, a faulty system that's depriving them of their money every month. Add to that the civil servants who say they hate working with this system. And the worst part is that all Quebecers and Canadians are realizing once again that the Liberals are spending their money recklessly and above all irresponsibly. With a cost overrun of $5 billion, it's ridiculous. Why is it that with the Liberals, it's always taxpayers' money that they're spending without restraint or respect? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I have a great deal of gratitude for the workers who are working hard and who are learning quickly. on a new system.
Mr. Speaker, that we talk about these civil servants with the respect that they deserve. In fact, at the beginning, of course, it was challenging to learn that system, but these workers have worked extremely hard to get better and more proficient at a brand new system. It's replacing a 60-year-old system, Mr. Speaker. I challenge us all to think back to what a computer system 60 years old might look like, and I'm very proud of the civil servants who have worked so hard.
The honourable member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, the Canadian forestry industry is under attack again from U.S. tariffs of 45%, and this inaction continues to threaten the livelihoods of our workers. There were lost jobs at the Domtar plant in Baie-Comeau in January. This morning we've announced job losses in Montreal and Latuque. When will we get rid of the U.S. tariffs and defend our forestry workers?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to remind the member opposite that while the Conservatives are obstructing our progress, we've proposed $2.5 billion in support from this government to go into the forestry sector. Workers and businesses know American tariffs are what is causing the problem. Do these folks understand it is the tariffs we need to be fighting, not each other, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Member for Hamilton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians want to choose electric vehicles, but they also want the confidence that they will be able to charge them where they live, work, and travel. This is a critical component of the government's auto strategy. Can the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources tell the House how today's announcement is helping build the charging infrastructure Canadians need while supporting jobs and investment across the country?
Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Thank you to the member for Hamilton Centre for the great work you're doing in your riding. Mr. Speaker, that's exactly what today's announcement is about. We're investing more than $97 million in 155 clean transportation projects across Canada, including $84 million to install 8,000 EV chargers, helping Canadians choose to drive electric with confidence. This builds on our progress to date and supports our auto strategy by strengthening Canada's charging network, attracting private investment, and keeping good jobs from coast to coast to coast.
Well done. The Honourable Member for Caribou Prince George.
On November 25th of 2021, a lone gunman circled the Vanderhoof RCMP detachment, spraying dozens of rounds into the particle board walls, narrowly missing the RCMP members working inside. They thought they were going to die that day. It's a miracle no one was killed. The Liberal government promised they would stand with these members. They promised they would partner with the province and the District of Vanderhoof to build a new detachment. But 5 years later, the memories are still raw. The bullet holes remain, serving as a constant reminder of that horrific day. The province is on board, the District of Vanderhoof is on board, but this government is missing an action. Why?
They're here. The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague from Caribou Prince George for this question, and let me also extend my deepest support to the individual RCMP officers who have been impacted. I will work with the Commissioner Duham to ensure that those who require the support, including new facilities, are addressed, Mr. Speaker. The work of the RCMP frontline personnel across Canada is truly inspiring, and I want to thank each and every member for their service to Canada, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Vancouver Kingsway.
The Prime Minister recently urged the global community to stand up to superpower intimidation and called on middle powers to stand together to resist it. The United States has imposed an illegal blockade on Cuba for decades, crippling its economy and causing mass suffering to the Cuban people. Now Donald Trump is cutting off fuel, risking humanitarian disaster. Will the Prime Minister stay true to his words in Davos, uphold independent Canadian foreign policy, and support Cuba in the face of aggressive U.S. imperialism?
Here. The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, we are deeply concerned by the deteriorating conditions in Cuba. Our consular officials are actively engaged. They stand ready to support Canadians in need. We are also working, Mr. Speaker, with the Cuban authorities and Canadian tourism stakeholders to ensure a timely and an effective response. We understand that aircraft carriers from Canadian airliners will be picking up Canadians. Our top priority will always be the safety and the security of Canadians, and our foreign policy is based on that.
The honourable member for Kootenay, Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, Alberta's Bill 11 is American-style two-tier medicine. It allows doctors to bill privately while also billing the public system and allows private insurance for medically necessary care. This breaks the promise of Canadian Medicare, creating one system for the wealthy and one where the rest of us are left waiting even longer. The minister said she would look into it, but it's been 2 months and we've heard nothing. Will she stop stalling, enforce the Canada Health Act, and protect Canada's universal health care system?
The Honourable Minister of Health. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to tell my colleague, yes, to date, we are looking with the legal services at Health Canada what is happening in Alberta, and I'm working closely with my counterpart provincially, and I will come back to them when we have an update as to when this act will be implemented or not. As I've said, to date, I am the guardian of the Public Health Act for Canadians.
I wish to draw the attention of members to the presence in the gallery of the Honourable Charmaine A. Williams, Associate Minister of Women's Social and Economic Opportunity for Ontario.
The value of Canadian citizenship is predicated on maintaining a high-trust society where everyone within our borders upholds the institutions that creates our peaceful pluralism, particularly and at a minimum upholding the rule of law. And so, if someone is not a citizen of Canada and they are a guest here, our laws state that if they commit serious crimes, they need to leave. But that is not what, in many cases, is happening today. While millions of non-citizens in Canada come to our nation and are here playing by the rules, there are now a legion of cases of those who do not, and that number is rapidly rising. This incredibly destructive trend is the direct result of a decade of Liberal government policies that have created loopholes and allowed serious criminals to be immediately released on bail, receive lenient sentences, and even claim refugee status in order to avoid deportation. In short, thanks to the Liberal government, there are now far less deterrents for non-citizens to get involved in gang activity, traffic drugs, and commit violent crimes. I know that that statement will make some quarters clutch their pearls. Oh, you can't say that. But the reality is that if we are going to protect Canada's pluralism, this truth must be spoken and addressed. Every statistic and every lived experience imaginable for law-abiding families in Surrey, Brampton, Edmonton, and beyond proves what I have just said is desperately and disgustingly true. Violent extortion schemes that have turned peaceful neighbourhoods into zones of fear are but one prime example. Since the Liberals have assumed power in 2015, extortion incidents have surged by 330%. In British Columbia alone, extortion incidents have skyrocketed by nearly 500% since 2015. And across Canada, the number of people charged with extortion rose from 680 to 2015 to 1,258 in 2024, an 85% jump, while the rate per 100,000 ballooned from 8.56 to 31.82, a 272% increase. That's a lot of statistics. That's a lot of numbers. But those numbers represent real people. Real human beings who have had their lives and their communities shattered. Small business owners who are receiving crude threats, demanding protection money, only to have their shops shot up. Homes that are riddled with bullets, and arsons that destroy people's livelihoods and sanctity. You'd think that the Liberal government by now, seeing all of these cases, seeing the fear that is exploding in many communities across Canada, would do something about it, right? Right? Wrong. A decade of soft on crime policies and the rote partisan rejection of constructive conservative proposals to end this tidal wave of violence has done what? It's emboldened gangs, many with transnational ties, to prey on the most vulnerable communities in our country, many of whom are newcomers and immigrants themselves. Worse, a very recent Global News story reported the following, and I'm going to read right from it. Canada's plan to expel those behind BC's extortion epidemic has hit a roadblock after more than a dozen suspects facing deportation claimed refugee status. The foreign nationals were identified by BC's extortion task force, but once the CBSA began investigating them, they claimed to be refugees. As a result, the deportation of 14 suspects have been put on hold until the Immigration Refugee Board decides whether they have legitimate claims for asylum. And so we are here today. The word used to describe this egregious abuse of Canada's asylum system by British Columbia New Democratic Party, so not Conservative, a New Democratic leader, David Eby, was ludicrous. And he's right. And he asked Parliament to do something to change the laws. So to Premier Eby, Conservatives have have listened to your call, and we're here today calling on the Liberal government and all members in this place to bar non-citizens convicted from serious crimes from making refugee claims. That seems like a no-brainer. Bar non-citizens who have active judicial proceedings related to serious crimes from making refugee claims. Also a no-brainer. End the practice of giving leniency to non-citizens convicted of serious crimes so that they can avoid deportation and avoid the spirit of the Immigration Refugee Protection Act, and repeals Liberal Bills C5 and C75 to ensure that repeat serious criminals stay in jail so that they don't get released back onto the streets immediately with impunity and the motivation to just serial reoffend. I would also note, Speaker, that Conservatives have also already attempted to get the Liberals to ban non-citizens convicted of serious crime from making asylum claims in an amendment to Bill C12, which is currently before the other place. But the Liberals in this place rejected this amendment, and that's crazy. I know the Liberals today, they'll likely rise and debate and say everything is fine and that laws already cover these issues, but they don't. They don't. And here are the facts. A massive backlog of asylum claims, nearly 300,000, about the entire population of Burnaby, which has been amassed under the Liberal government, means that non-citizens can make asylum claims that take years to process. This includes non-citizens convicted of or who have active legal proceedings for committing serious crimes. And Bill C12, which is currently in the other place, would only in theory prevent non-citizens who have been in Canada for over a year from making asylum claims. It does nothing to stop a non-citizen from entering Canada, committing, especially with ties to transnational gangs, and we know that there are major problems with screening right now, and then committing serious crime within a year and then making a refugee claim. This is why we proposed the amendment that we did, and it's why the Liberals should have accepted that amendment, but they didn't. And that is arguably insane. That is what is fueling this crisis. There's also the massive problem of judges routinely giving lenient sentences to non-citizens convicted of serious crimes in order to avoid deportation, which is already set out as a consequence in the Immigration Refugee Protection Act. I have a simple one-line bill to amend the criminal code that the Liberals could pass today that would stop this practice. And yet, when I raised my bill in the House, the Liberals were so tone-deaf that during the debate, the Liberal Deputy Government House Leader made the false claim that judges do not grant special leniences in cases, for example, of sexual assault, and questioned whether or not anyone seriously believed that a rapist would receive preferential treatment because of potential deportation risks. He implied, and Liberals have implied, that these scenarios are far-fetched, but yet the very next day I was able to rise in this House. I could have given multiple examples, but of one in Barrie where a non-citizen pleaded guilty of raping a 13-year-old girl and impregnating her twice, but was given an adjournment specifically to evaluate how his guilty plea and sentence would affect his immigration status. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. That is an abrogation of our democratic system and upholding the rule of law and our immigration laws. It is disgusting. And we have had silence from these people over and over again. And Premier Eby is right. It has to change. Why? The fact that the Liberals have not only made this situation worse and empowered it, the fact that they're silent today on this, not doing anything, is why immigration attitudes have hardened in Canada. It's the why. It's the silent thing that nobody wants to talk about, but it's true. It's destroying our pluralism, and it's making the lives of everybody harder, Canadian and newcomer alike, and it has to stop. And that's why we have this motion here in front of the House of Commons today. These things have to change. They're real. They're destroying communities. My colleagues later today will talk about the impacts of what the fact that the Liberals have not repealed Bill C5 and Bill C75. They're bills which have enabled the catch and release justice system that lowered sentences for serious crimes and provide every incentive possible for people to commit serious crimes in Canada and get away with it. By eliminating these deterrents, it signaled to criminals that repercussions are minimal, and it contributed to massive spikes across the country in violent crime, firearms offenses, sexual assaults. Sexual assaults! I thought we would get serious about sexual assault in this place, but no, that bill still stands. There's no deterrent for it, and they won't move. And every time I hear somebody say, like, oh, you know, sexual assault, it's such a thing, or that, there's no action. Somewhere today, I bet you right now, in Surrey, in Brampton, in Edmonton, in Calgary, somebody is receiving an extortion threat. Somebody has been defrauded of their life savings. And yet, somebody is going to receive catch and release bail or might be able to make a refugee claim.
Hi. Unfortunately, the honourable member is out of time. Questions and comments? The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What's disgusting has been the obstruction from the opposition. Back in June, we brought Bill C2, which contains provisions which would not have allowed those asylum claims to be made in Surrey that the member references. Madam Speaker, in Bill C2, which is now, that portion is in C12 and in the House, in the Senate, would not allow any person who has entered Canada over 12 months ago to make an asylum claim. They're ineligible to even file the claim. All of those individuals, those 12 individuals, had been in Canada for over a year. They would have been ineligible had they not obstructed, had they passed that bill back in June, and that is disgusting, Madam Speaker.
For Calgary Nose Hill.
Or the bill that's in front of the House of Commons. Two things. Number one, it was Conservatives that went to Liberals to separate out the parts that she talked about are Bill C12, not Bill C2. Wrong, number one. Wrong, number two, Bill C12 does not stop somebody from coming into Canada right now, committing a violent crime, and then making an asylum claim. The other thing is that they have 300,000 people in the refugee claim system right now, which means that it takes, what, years for those claims to be processed. And in those years, those violent criminals can avoid deportation, claim social benefits, and all sorts of other things that make a mockery of Canada's immigration system, our justice system, and hardened attitudes toward immigration. That is disgusting. I can't believe she doesn't even...
Questions et commentaires.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for La Pointe-de-L'Île. Yeah, so I'd like to know from my colleague, you know, in the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, there are already offenses. So asylum seekers who committed offenses either in Canada or outside of Canada are essentially ineligible to stay in Canada. So is this not redundant?
For Calgary Nose Hill.
I welcome the question because it's a good one, and they're not. It's not redundant. In practice, and as well as in the law, we need to have an amendment to clarify, to ensure that violent crime, people who are committed of violent crimes cannot claim asylum and do not give lenient sentences. There are many instances now where the Immigration Refugee Protection Act needs modernization. The definition of serious crime needs to be updated so that judges can't use loopholes to give people leniency and avoid deportation. And also the criminal code needs to be updated as well, which is why I have a private member's bill in front of the House. The Liberals and the House could pass those things today, expedite them, end these processes. I'm very happy to work with my colleague through these bills, but he's wrong. And he's hearing what lawyers and powerful lobby groups who profit off of these systems are saying, and he's not hearing the practical reality of victims.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
She just commented how the minister doesn't even understand or know some of the contents of bills, and it makes me think of C5 and C75, two bills that made house arrest possible and took away mandatory minimums. So I'm wondering if the member has some comments on those two bills and how they are affecting the situation.
Honourable Member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
I thank you to my colleague for raising these bills. I mean, here's the reality. As I mentioned in my speech, there are many bills in front of the House of Commons that Conservatives have proposed that I think the Liberals have just rejected on blind partisanship. And here's the reality. The Liberals need to stop listening to far-left special interest groups, powerful lobby groups of lawyers who profit off of this system, and start listening to the victims of crime. Premiers like Premier David Eby are saying we need more measures to support these things. There needs to be a reset in thinking that focuses on victims, upholds the sanctity of the law, and Canada's...
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Mount Royal.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my colleague who, as always, gave a very interesting speech. The last part, Part D of the motion, calls for the repeal of Bill C-75, which would essentially put the criminal law back to the state it was before Bill C-75, which did a number of important things, one of which was repeal the body house laws and vagrancy laws that led to the mass jailing of gay men in Toronto and Montreal. Would the member explain to us why the entire Bill C-75 should be repealed as opposed to the part on extortion?
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Nose Hill in 20
My
seconds.
question would be, as a member of the government caucus, why the member supported a bill that protected the rights of LGBTQ Canadians, which I fully support, but also made their lives more difficult by catch and releasing criminals that terrorize them. The government often makes these false dichotomies where we have to sacrifice common sense civil liberties or protections that protect victims in order to protect one group of people. I don't buy that, and the member opposite shouldn't either.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for
Cooper for 6 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses. Ms. Lloyd, you indicated...
Oh, yeah.
You should do exercises. That's important to our good health. And friends, tomorrow we are going to be visiting with a fisherman who will tell us about his very enjoyable hobby. Now, I would like to see you all through our magic mirror. Romper bumper, stomper boo, tell me do. Magic mirror, please tell me today, did all of my friends have fun at play? I see all of my friends in Alberta. It's nice to see you. And I see Dan and Vivian. I see Marlon and Mona. I see Catherine and Harley. I see Anne and Elizabeth and Jane. I see Bert and Nicole, and I see you too. I hope to see you tomorrow, right here in Romper Room.
Bing bong, knock knock, hey daddy do. Bing bong, tick tock, bebop boom.
Kick off your weekend with exciting CFL action when the Edmonton Eskimos tackle the BC Lions in Vancouver. Tomorrow night at 10:30 on CFTO TV.